Well, aloha everyone and welcome to the Cameron Center on Maui. On behalf of the Grassroots Institute, I want to say aloha and Maui no ka'oi. Isn't that right? Maui's number one. It's been unfortunate that since the beginning of the pandemic lockdowns, we've been unable to be here. So today, August 19th, 2021, we're back and we're in public, and I just am so glad to be here with all of you. I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute, and I just can't tell you what a joy it is to see so many old friends together again today. And just to be here eating lunch together, enjoying our conversation and learning from all of you, well, that's a delight. And I want you to know today we want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions, so at the end, our guest speaker will be available for questions and answers, and we're going to broadcast what we have here. We're going to circulate it to all of our membership, our friends, and those who watch the programs of the Grassroots Institute. Let me just wave to a couple of staff that are here with us today and say aloha to them. Our Executive Vice President and Coordinator for our Maui work, Joe Kent, he's in the back. Say hi to Joe over there. We've also got Jamie Chapman, who's been taking care of events for us. Jamie, hi. And outside, Sean Mitsui. Thank you for being here, Sean, and all your work. You know, when we went to school, we gauged our performance by what kind of report cards we got. And how many of you remember going home with that anxiety as to whether your parents had actually gotten your report card? Did some of you ever hide the report card? But you know, government doesn't work well unless there is a good report card system in place. And there's a lady who has gone around the country, and I dare say she is feared, and governments tremble with trepidation when they hear that she's on her way. That's my good friend Sheila Weinberg. Sheila went to school at the University of Denver, got her bachelor's in accounting, went on, became a CPA, and served in many capacities, helping government leaders understand what their books really said. It's not always the case that government leaders wanted to hear what their books really said. But she instituted a program of evaluating government performance in the area of finances and has an organization called Truth in Accounting. Now stop there for a moment. Truth in Accounting. We usually think of accounting as being truthful, but the fact is the way governments do their books is not always truthful. Sheila set up a grading system, and in the most recent report, the state of Hawaii got a grade of F for our finances and how we're handling them. And there are lots of things that people aren't really aware of that are going on in our finances, lots of things that aren't being reported. She's here today on Maui to share with you also the grade that Maui got, and I'll hold that in suspense for a moment as well. But in any case, I want you to give a warm welcome to somebody who has worked closely with the Grassroots Institute, who has consulted with us, who's helped us to do our job better here in the state of Hawaii in terms of holding government accountable for the sake of the benefit of our citizens. Please welcome Sheila Weinberg. Sheila, thank you so much for being with us today. We have a microphone for you right here.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to use the handheld or the...
Both of them.
Oh, both of them?
Thank you.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming out during this crazy time. Hopefully, I spoke once to a group called the Log Cabin Republicans. Have you heard of them? They're actually gay Republicans. And when I got done, one of the gentlemen said to me, well, Sheila, when I came in, I was happy and gay, and now I'm just gay. I asked. So today, so we're going to play Jenga today, and this is an interactive exercise. So you guys are going to come and help me play Jenga. We did Jenga based on how many people have seen the movie The Big Short. The Big Short used the Jenga game to explain derivatives. And I think I understand them based on that, but I won't go into the details of that because even the word derivatives. So the next day I came into the office and I said, and Illinois had done another stupid thing or proposed, that's my home state, proposed another stupid thing like re-amortizing their pension debt. which sounds totally innocuous, but it was where they were just going to, it's like your credit card, and instead of paying it off over 60 months, you're going to now pay it off over 120 months. And that was their way to fix things. And I'm like, it's just like a big bad Jenga game where they just keep on pulling the blocks, and they're going to make Illinois' finances crumble. And so we found the same thing here in Hawaii. They're doing very similar things. Not as Illinois is the poster child for doing bad budgeting, but there are things that are going on here. So we're going to play Jenga. Since it's my game, I get to play first. When you come up and play Jenga, you cannot take a block that is above the Hawaii finances. So I'm going to take the first block out, and I'm already making it fall down. Your state is so flimsy, it's already falling down. And then you read the block. It says balance your budget. So on the back of the sheet, Patty, if you can read your state's balanced budget requirement.
This whole thing. General fund expenditures for any fiscal year shall not exceed the state's current general fund revenues and unencumbered cash balances, except when the governor publicly declares that public health, safety, or welfare is threatened as provided by law.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so that sounds like a good thing. The state has a balanced budget requirement. 49 of the 50 states do have balanced budget requirements. Anybody know the state that doesn't? Vermont. Alaska actually does very well in our study. And the reason that, and they have balanced budget requirements for very good reasons. One is so you don't go into debt, and the other one is so you can hold your elected officials accountable, and we'll get into more of that. But the state of Hawaii has balanced its budget, has met this requirement theoretically, but somehow they're $18 billion in debt, even though they have balanced their budget. So throughout the game of Jenga, we will explain how they do that. Kenneth, since you sat in the front row, you can come and pull the next block out. I will help you. Unlike most Jenga games you may not touch the Jenga game, but since this one's made out of cardboard, you can touch the Jenga game. This is interactive, so you have to read the block.
Pay as you go plan for retiree health care.
Okay, so this is one of the things that the state does to get itself in trouble, is until 2013, they had what they call a pay-as-you-go retiree health care plan. What that means is, like on your credit card, they would just pay the new current employees, the current retirees' benefits. They paid those as they went along. Now, there's no reason that they didn't pre-fund them. And when there's to hold accountable, there's no reason that current taxpayers should be paying for a retired person's retiree health care, because that person's not working for them at all. So it should be pre-funded, but the state chose to, instead of pre-funding it, they handled it as a pay-as-you-go program, which most governments do. So instead of, as a part of employee compensation, they get their salaries, and that's included in the budget. They also get pensions. They earn the right to receive and are promised and earn pensions each period, and they also earn the right to receive retiree health care benefits. But the latter two, all of those don't have to be included in the balanced budget calculation, because those aren't going to be paid for years to come. So they do pre-fund some of them, but not all of them. And so then the balanced budget calculation does not include all of that compensation cost. Lauren, can you come and play Jenga, please? Oh, I'm sorry, we forgot. I'm supposed to put this on the top. There we go. I will help you.
Record loan proceeds as revenue.
You can put them. Okay, so this is a great game that Illinois actually does. Your state, again, your balanced budget requirement says that your revenues have to equal your expenditures. But in Illinois, it actually doesn't say revenues. It says your funds available. So in Illinois, you can, if you borrow money, that becomes available. And you can balance the budget by borrowing money. So one year, Illinois borrowed $3 billion, and it's claimed it's balanced its budget. Now, in yours, back to Patty reading the requirement, at the end of it, it says, Patty, what does that say? Except
When the governor publicly declares the public health, safety, or welfare is threatened as provided by law.
yes. So he can make an exception. And during the pandemic, he declared an emergency. So remember, until 2013, the state was doing their retiree health care on a pay-as-you-go basis. Well, they had decided to start pre-funding it, to put money aside. Because if you promise somebody benefits, then it's probably good to have money set aside for that. So they started to do that. Well, during the pandemic, they said, oh, we're going to declare emergency. We are not going to pre-fund. We're not going to pay. It's kind of like, think of it as a minimum payment on your credit card. In order to pay it off over 37 years, we're going to have to put X amount of minimum payment each period. So they just decided to skip that minimum payment. Now, how many of you during this pandemic decided to skip the minimum payments on your credit card? I hope none of you, because that would be bad. Well, they're not. They went ahead, and in 2020, they did not. They just decided to take a holiday, a contribution holiday. So they didn't pay the $408 million, but they still balanced the budget. And the actuaries, the number of people, estimated that over the next 37 years, since they didn't pay that $408 million, they're going to have to contribute $922 million to make up for that shortfall. Justin, correct? Please come and play Jenga. Awesome.
Budget for only half your expenses.
Okay, so as an accountant, and Travis was mentioning, and also Joe was mentioning, the governments do produce annual financial reports. They used to be called comprehensive annual financial reports. Now they're called annual comprehensive financial reports. And the state does produce those. Those statements showed that the state had $15 billion of expenses, but if you look at the state's budget, they only budgeted for $8 billion. So I don't know how the other $6 billion is authorized to be spent. Maybe it's special funds. Also, again, remember that the budget said their expenditures, not their expenses. It's the expenditures. So it's only the checks that they choose to write. It's not the expenses that they incur. So Illinois, I don't think your state has this, but Illinois has, they usually have between $2 to $12 billion of what they call unpaid bills. And they will budget, in their budget, they'll say, the unpaid bills are going to start at $2 billion, and by the end of the year, they're going to be $4 billion. And they're going to incur those costs, but because they're choosing not to write a check, they don't have to include that in the balanced budget calculation. It's insane. But your budget, as I say, they only budget for $15 billion. I mean for $8 billion, but it includes but the financial statements say that they have $15 billion. Chuck, can you come and play Jenga, please? Do not destroy the Hawaii's finances.
Or we already, well, we can't do that one anymore.
No, you can't do that low. Hi, sorry, nice try.
That won't work. Oh, man. All right.
Okay.
Whoa. Pretend pension assets will earn 7%.
Chuck, you have to put it at the top. Sorry. Thank you. because I don't want to cause it to fall down. All right, so as I was mentioning, the pension benefits, the pensions, the state does have some assets. They have pre-funded some of these benefits. Again, think of it kind of like if you have a Christmas fund and you put money aside for that Christmas fund, you have those assets available. So how many of you people think that over the next period of time you're going to earn 7% interest on your investments? Okay. Well, the state's actuaries and pension plans believe that they're going to earn 7% interest on their pension plans. Now, one of the reasons that they keep this number so high is because you have to think about it. If the pension assets earn a lot of money, then that means the less they can contribute to the plan. Because if it only earns a little bit of money, then in order to pay the promised benefits, you have to contribute more. So the politicians, because they have that balanced budget requirement, and if they write a check to the pension plan, then they might have to raise more money or cut spending elsewhere, and they don't want to do that. So they want to keep your pension contributions as low as possible. So the higher your pension assets earn, or at least you pretend they're going to earn, the less contributions you have to pay. One of our friends went to a hearing in California, and they spent days saying our rate of return, our pension asset number is 7%, it's way too high, and they spent days, and everybody agreed, and everybody who came in, and the last person who came to testify was the state's comptroller, and the state's comptroller said, oh, by the way, if we reduce this contribution rate, the discount rate, they call it the discount rate, our contributions are going to go up by X amount of money. The legislators all closed their books up and decided not to change the rate. Now, if the assets don't earn that rate, what they assume they're going to earn, then guess what happens? Who makes up the difference? The taxpayers. The benefits are the same no matter how much the plan earns. And last year the plan earned 2.1%. So the taxpayers are going to have to make that up unless in future years the pension assets earn more. Let's see, Alan, can you come and play Jenga? Don't destroy the state, its finances. Oh, nope, that's too high.
That's too high.
You can't go Hawaii finances or above. People try to go the easy way on this. I'm helping you. I'm holding it. Come on, you can do it. He must be an engineer. You can, anything below this is acceptable.
Oh, you gotta be careful. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Let employees retire at 60.
I'm not putting it on top there. There you go, perfect. All right, so again, so how many of you guys are going to get a paid pension when you retire at 60? Okay. State workers retire at 60, and they get full pension benefits for the rest of their lives, and retiree health care benefits for the rest of their lives. The earlier somebody retires, the longer they are on the pension system, the longer they're on the retiree health care system, so they just, even though they're no longer working for the state, they still get these benefits, and the taxpayers have to pay them. Francesca. I only make it easy for you. We're at the
difficult part, aren't
Yeah, we're at the difficult part. Oh, she's going for the delicate.
Offer generous retiree health care benefits.
Okay, so again, this goes back to the keeping salaries low. And remember, again, in your balanced budget requirement, it says expenditures. So the employees always want more. That's just human nature. But if we raise their salaries, then that's going to raise their paychecks, that's going to increase expenditures, and that might mean a tax increase or cutting elsewhere. And we don't want to do either one of those because we will be unpopular with the voters. So, in order to keep the employees happy, they keep on giving them more and more retiree health care. When the Affordable Care Act was in place, Hawaii's and other states and local pension plans were going to have to pay a Cadillac plan fee, because their pension benefits, retiree health care benefits, were so generous that they were going to have to pay additional tax on them. So in Hawaii, if you retire, and again you're retiring at 60, before 1992 you could retire at 55, but now it's up to 60. You get medical, you get dental, you get vision, you get life insurance, and how many of you are paying for a Medicare supplemental premium? The state pays their Medicare supplemental premium. So obviously, again, that just increases, and Hawaii's retiree health care benefits, right? They're going to get $11 billion of people who are current retirees or future retirees. They're going to get $11 billion of health care benefits. And how much of that is unfunded? $9 billion of that is underfunded. It kind of reminds me, I was telling Joe about the last time I came to Hawaii. I came here because we'd issued one of these reports, and one of the House members, Gene Warden, had read it and had me come out for a debt hearing. So I'm on the plane, excited to come to Hawaii to do a debt hearing, and I'm reviewing all my presentation, and most government schedules come in thousands. So I was going over my presentation, and then I noticed, like, our schedule said that the state had $9 billion of unfunded retiree health care benefits. But I'm looking at the schedule and it says 9,00. So that would mean 9 million. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like a better number for a state the size of Hawaii. 9 million would be more appropriate. Oh, my heart sunk to the bottom of the ocean floor, because without this error of 9 billion instead of 9 million, they really didn't have that much debt. But unfortunately, that schedule was in millions. So unfortunately, your state does have $9 billion of unfunded health care debt. Again, that future taxpayers are going to have to pay. Those workers are not working for them. Travis, do you want to come and he'll figure this out? I'll give him a clue.
Where do you want me? Here?
Wherever you want to be, wherever you're comfortable. So just a second. Okay. So what you'll do is you'll push one of them toward the center. You can push it toward the center so it won't fall down. Push it toward the center so it won't fall down.
Serious?
Yep, serious. Okay, then take the other one. Okay. We got it.
Keep salary costs low.
So we've been talking about that. So you want to keep those low so your expenditures don't go up. Okay, Barbara. Keep in mind what Travis did to cheat, so feel free. Oh, and before you go into that, let me tell you why I let you cheat. It came out of Illinois, because Illinois cheats when it calculates its balanced budget requirement, believe it or not. If you read Illinois' financial report, the comprehensive annual financial report, which is an audited financial report, it states, deep on page 132, they quote the balanced budget, the state budget law, and then right below it, it says, revenue and expenditure estimates have not been provided in accordance with these provisions. So, in other words, you have the comptroller, a constitutional officer of the state of Illinois, saying that the state of Illinois is breaking the law. So that's why I let you cheat. Any ideas here? This is what the legislatures have to do to try to figure out the balanced budget. They have to get very creative.
So it has to be below what?
Below this. So I would recommend you pushing that in and then stealing that. There we go. Okay. Oh. There, just a second.
Focus on cash in hand.
Whoa.
And now it goes on top?
Yeah, good luck with that. Woo. Focus on cash at hand. So what the governments do is they focus on the general fund and the balance in the general fund. But this would be like you focusing on your cash account without looking at your credit cards. Okay? So they can look like they're in fine shape. They can look like they're balancing the budget because they're only including like $8 billion instead of 15. And they just look at the balance, the cash account balance. They don't include all the accruing pensions, all the accruing retiree healthcare liabilities. So again, they can balance their budget. Life is fine. This all works out good for politicians because what are politicians focused on? The next election. So they want to look at a very short-sighted view. But it doesn't work out for the taxpayers because they continually make long-term financial decisions that's going to affect the taxpayers for years to come, but they don't have to focus on that. Are you going to come and mess up the state's finances?
Only on your invitation.
Feel free to come and mess up the Go ahead.
What are we doing here, Sheila?
So go ahead, pull out a block.
You mean the Grassroots Institute is going to have to do this?
Yes, you are going to mess up Hawaii's finances.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is our balanced budget. Give Sheila a hand.
Go ahead, pull her up.
Okay, Sheila, here we go. Promise retirement benefits, don't set aside enough money. Make promises and don't set aside money for them. Okay, everybody. Here we go.
I like this one better.
Okay,
Do
this
that
one's
one.
better?
Yeah, try that
You wanna
one.
read that, Sheila?
Sure, it says invest taxpayers' money in the stock market.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Roulette with
Do it quickly.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Thank you, Sheila.
So what that means, okay, so I always find it kind of humorous when people go, when the stock market takes a hit, and they're like, whew, thank goodness I'm not in the stock market. Well, 33% of the state's pension assets are in the stock market, and 9% of the state's pension assets are in real estate. And so when the value of those go down, remember, the benefits do not change no matter what. When the value of those pension assets go down, guess who has to make up for the difference? So unfortunately, you guys are all in the stock market. And if you want to come afterwards, we can go over some more. So what you can do is you can obviously, did you guys sign up? Did you guys bring in morning call? Did you guys sign up for morning call as they came in? Great.
Yes.
Morning call is a daily, why don't you bring the sheet in and they can sign up. It's a daily email that my research director, Bill Bergman, prepares. He does federal, state, and local government budgeting and accounting stories every single day. Sign up for that. We have a website, which we can demonstrate if we have time, called Data Z, which allows you to compare Hawaii's finances to other finances. And then we don't include just finances, we include things like economic things, demographic things, and other financial things, which you can compare the state. So for example, one of the data points in there is the number of attorneys you have. Oh, how many attorneys do we have in here? The number of attorneys you have in a state, and we do find a direct correlation between the number of attorneys you have in the state. The more you have, the worse financial shape the government state is in. Just another. That allows you to do, you can look at your state. Oh, yeah, why don't you go to, he stole the mouse. Oh, that's all right. And then the other thing you can do is, obviously encourage other groups to have me speak, donate to our efforts and to grassroots efforts. And then we also have, and Joe has watched this, on how to read your own financial reports. So I did do a financial state of Maui. We didn't do a hard copy, we just put the numbers together. You can contact me if you want a report like this done for Maui. Unfortunately, the news was not good. They have $866 million of money needed to pay bills. $866 million. That works out to be about $14,000 per taxpayer. Then you have to add that on. So that's just for Maui, and then you have to add the state on top of that, which is $37,000. So you're at $51,000. So what this represents, our taxpayer burden, the reason we call it a burden is because future taxpayers are going to be burdened with paying those taxes. And again, it's like a credit card. They've already charged that cost up. You're not going to receive any government services or benefits for those taxes because it's already been. It's for retirees that have already retired.
Well,
thank you very
Let's
much
give a
for
big
having.
hand to Sheila. That's just tremendous, that presentation. Stay up here, Sheila. Wow, isn't that something? You came in here maybe not knowing that as a state taxpayer, you owe $37,000 in debt. And that as a Maui taxpayer on top of that, it's up to $51,000. That's incredible. And Sheila brings revelations like that all the time.
But Maui only got a D. They didn't get an F.
Only the D for Maui. All right. And by the way, she did do Honolulu County.
They got an F.
They got an F. We want you to ask whatever questions you have for Sheila at this time. We have a few minutes left. Just raise your hand and we'll bring a microphone over.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Chuck.
Is it really true that Alan Arakawa, who was mayor once and then he skipped a term and then he was mayor again, does he get 2 pensions?
I do not believe so.
I heard he does. Okay.
Well, in the world in which we live, that's a fair question.
Yeah, because you only have one pension system. In Illinois, because we are the poster child of bad finances, in Illinois, in my little village, we call it Glencoe, there was a gentleman who was a police officer who eventually became the police chief. He was on the Glencoe Police Department's pension plan. He retired from that at 50, I think it was 50 because he was a police officer. And then he became our village manager. Well, the village manager is not on our local pension plan. He's on what they call a multi-employer plan. So it's an Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. So he worked 10 years to become fully vested in that plan. And so he does get two pensions from the same taxpayers, a police pension and then one for him being village manager.
But Chuck, here in Hawaii, the employee retirement system applies both to the state and to the counties. They're in the same boat. We have a question in the back. Pam Tumpak, the Maui Chamber of Commerce. Good to have you here today.
Great to be here.
I'll try not to publish this report to scare businesses away.
We like to have the information.
Okay.
Actually, I was on the panel with you when you spoke for Gene Moore.
Oh, awesome. Great to see you again.
Nice to see you too. So we know the Maui number and we know the state number. What's the federal number that we all have as well?
So the federal government, I won't answer that directly. The federal government, right now they'll report and tell you that their debt is $27 trillion, I believe. Is that what it's up to? Yeah, 29 billion.
It's that number that keeps going up.
Yeah. This is what the federal government will report. The truth is almost 134 trillion. And then each taxpayer's share, this is about a per house home number, is a mere 855,000. The difference between the two numbers is how many of you believe that the federal government owes you Social Security and Medicare benefits that you've been promised? Okay. The federal government does not believe that they owe you those benefits, and so they do not record Social Security or Medicare as a liability on their balance sheets because they believe that they can change the law at any point in time and take those benefits away. When you're, quote, contributing into the Social Security system, you are not contributing into the Social Security system. It is a pure and simple tax. And whatever you contribute, there's also a quote I can give you. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's a quote that the quote, contributions or taxes you pay have nothing to do with the benefits that you're going to get.
Incredible, isn't it? Who's next?
Justin.
Justin over here. Go ahead.
I guess what is
Could you put the microphone up to your mouth? Good.
So what is the solution or moving forward? Like I have 2 young boys and I'm a member of this community. Like, what do we do to fix this problem?
Great question. Sheila, what's the answer?
Okay, so the answer is, one, I'm very glad you brought up the question because I have done my job. That you understand that there is a problem. Previously, you've been told the budgets are balanced, everything is fine, and now you understand the problem and that something needs to be done. In order to fix this, I'll turn it back over to the Grassroots Institute. How would you are going to have to either raise taxes or revenue, or you're going to have to cut spending or benefits.
Well, we have to,
or all the above.
Right. We can't just put them against each other. I think we have to take a look at each piece of this puzzle, like the Jenga, and see why it's not well-founded. For example, the employee retirement system. Sheila pointed out that promises were made at the front end that have to be paid at the tail end. That kind of system has to be shifted so that we are actually only promising what the system can produce. And if we take each aspect, including the healthcare program and so forth, and reform it, there are a set of principles that can be followed that we've published and put on our website. So Sheila, what do you think is needed as you have looked at different states and different counties across the country? What is needed to get politicians to act? Because we know the answers. The best practices are out there, but they're not being used necessarily by governments. What works? What have you seen change government?
Well, I'll give you Utah as an example. Utah does run its state pretty well. We actually gave the state of Utah our Truth in Accounting Award. Alaska, as I say, is our best state, but Utah does run their finances very well, budgets very well. And I was able to present that to the budget director of Utah. And I said, you know what? You can answer the question that people always ask me of like, how does Utah do a good job and other states don't? And she facetiously said, well, in the state of Utah, we do this crazy thing where we only promise the services and benefits that we can afford. And so our first step is let's go ahead and truly balance our budget. Don't play these games. Go ahead and pre-fund your pensions. Use a normal discount rate. I'm sorry if your contributions have to go up, but that's the truth. Pre-fund your retiree health care benefits. Let people know the real cost of government. There's a great quote by a former Treasury official, U.S. Treasury official, Frank Kavanaugh, who once said, the politicians shouldn't have the pleasure of spending, i.e. they're going to get a vote, without the pain of taxing, i.e. they're going to lose a vote. And what has been happening in this state is you've actually been getting government, I know you probably don't believe this, you've been getting government that cost more than you've been paying. And so you either need to reduce that cost but you're not going to be able to reduce that cost until people understand the cost. And the way they're going to understand the cost, Grassroots Institute might not like this, but the way they're going to understand the cost is you have to say, if you're going to have this government of this size, here's how much taxes you're going to have to pay. Now, do you want government do you want to have to pay that much in taxes? And if you don't, then where would you like me to cut? What benefits would you like to cut? What services would you like to cut? But if you're not upfront with the public, if you don't use truthful accounting, truthful budgeting, we have something called fact-based budgeting, which would require you to use the truthful numbers and let the public know how much government really costs.
Sheila's work is actually making a difference here in the state of Hawaii. As you all know, every year the state legislature and the governor go through a dance, actually every 2 years, to balance the budget. And in that process, they take a look at documents, particularly one called the budget, that looks at all of the revenues and all of the expenditures.
Only 8 billion of them.
But what it doesn't do is a very simple thing that if you were running a household you'd have to do. It doesn't look at the balance sheet. It doesn't look at the debt that you're carrying. And can you imagine moving forward in your household expenditures simply looking at that year's revenues versus expenditures, but not looking at the long-term credit card debt, the long-term mortgage, the long-term liabilities you have? Well, Sheila helped us to prepare some testimony that we've circulated here to government leaders, as well as presented before the Government Accounting Standards Board, and that was through Joe Kent. Thank you very much for going up there. But we couldn't have done that on our own. We took advantage of the expertise of Sheila, so I just really want to commend Truth in Accounting, her organization, to you. Thank you very much, Sheila. That's been very helpful. We also have a question from Chuck now.
That came from Hans, like 2 questions. From everything you said, it seems like one of the best solutions for this would be term limits, because if politicians were trying to buy the next vote every time, they might do something right in the one chance they got. Does that make sense to you?
That's an area that I'll let grassroots get into. We, I hate to sound like a politician and not answer the question. We find that if we get too much into public policy, besides truthful budgeting and accounting, then people are just like, well, you're producing that we owe $37,000 per taxpayer because you have this certain agenda. And we don't have an agenda. We just want the truthful numbers out there. So what would you say to that?
Well, you can come back to our seminar on term limits. But the thing is that no one political solution is the answer. Because in a perfect world where you had a pool of perfect political candidates waiting to replace the incumbents, term limits might make sense. But I don't want to get myself into trouble here, but if you happen to live in a world where you don't have a pool of qualified political candidates to replace the current candidates, you may just be playing musical chairs, and that's all we'll say today on that. Any other questions for Sheila? Oh yes, Francesca.
So Sheila, which state is the most...
Gets an A.
Which state? Yes, thank you.
Gets an A. Actually, the state of Alaska is our best state. Now, in a lot of studies, Alaska gets a very poor grade because studies only look at their pension debt. And their pensions are poorly funded. But we do a holistic approach at looking at the numbers. We say just looking at your pension debt is sort of me saying, oh, Francesca, you're in horrible financial shape. You have credit card debt of $10,000. Well, you could come back to me and say, well, hold it, I have $20,000 in the bank. And so you're not in shape. So we do not look at pensions by itself. Alaska has 2 permanent funds. One is a truly permanent fund and they cannot touch it. So we do not include that in our study. You'll see that in our study we don't include what they call restricted assets, and that's a restricted asset. But they do have what they call a budget stabilization fund that they could use to fund the pensions or, quote, stabilize the budget. So if you include that, I can't remember their exact number, but they're like $52,000 per taxpayer ahead of the game. It does seem to be resource-rich states, so Alaska's good, Utah, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming. So those states are doing well also.
More questions for Sheila? We must really be thinking hard here. Go ahead, Lauren.
I was wondering,
We have a microphone for you, Lauren.
when you're talking with government officials, how do you find that their fluency in talking about these issues in government accounting is? Is it kind of like a foreign language? They don't really understand it? Is it, this is just how it is, this is how it works, like this is a balanced budget? What do you see there?
I hate to say, but they really don't get it. And also you will talk to somebody about a pension, like, oh, well, you know, our biggest debt here in the state is the pension. You know, have you thought of, you know, how you're going to reform that? And they'll go, well, I'm not on the pension committee, or I'm not on the budget committee. It's like, well, don't you vote on the budget? Do you not vote on pensions? And again, until 2015, the state governments were not required to put their pension liability on the face of their balance sheets. and they didn't put their retiree health care liabilities on their face of their balance sheets until 2019. So when we would come to them and say, well, you have this horrible pension and retiree health care debt, they'd be like, well, you know, where do you get that number? It's like, well, we get it out of your, and in fact, Hawaii is one of those states where it was hard to calculate what the number was because I'll tell you the South Dakota story. When we do this for every state, it's called the financial state of the states. And so we were doing the numbers for South Dakota, whose numbers aren't that bad, but we couldn't, before the governmental, I'm only hesitating because you get into a lot of accounting mumbo jumbo. But there is on the private sector side, there is an accounting standards board called the Financial Accounting Standards Board. It sets accounting standards for corporations. But the government's decided we are different. We shouldn't have to use those standards. So they created their own board called the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And they did not require state and local governments to put their pension liabilities on their balance sheets. When I went to testify to say, yeah, you should put the pension liability on your balance sheet, they said, well, it's impossible. The executive chairman said, Sheila, you're testifying early in the day, and I guarantee you that everybody who testifies after you is going to say it's impossible to calculate some state's share of the liability. Because like Hawaii and South Dakota, they have what they call multi-employer plans. So as you were saying, the state's involved, Maui County's involved, and we don't know whose share is whom's. And they said, why do you think that they can do it? And I said, well, I can, as an employee, I can go online, I can put my employee information in, and online, on demand, you can calculate the plan, the system can calculate my benefits. I'm like, just add up all the employees' benefits like that. And then I held up our report, and I said, and we've done it for 5 years. The way we did it is we said, okay, it was one of the times when we'd gotten a grant to do our first study, and 3 times I actually thought of returning the grant. I was like, this is too hard to do. So the way we would do it is we would take historically what each government's share of the contributions were and calculate the state share or the city share based on that. South Dakota, we could not find a list of their contributions. So I called the state financial person and I said, could you tell me how much the state's share of the liability is? He's like, no, we don't have that. I said, well, how much did you contribute to the plan? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, didn't you write a check? He's like, no, we just transfer money. He said, contact the pension people. So I contacted the pension people, and I was surprised she did it in an email, but in an email she said, we do not keep track of the contributions or the liability by employer, by the state. We cannot tell you. And we had to do it by, we finally found a schedule that had how many employees were state employees and how many, and that was the only way we could do it. But before that, even the pension plan actuaries didn't know what the state's liabilities were. You can't, one problem I have with, and I don't know the answer, I do not know what option number 2 is, but who are the ultimate managers of these defined pension contribution plans? The legislators. And you can't tell me the legislators understand the actuarial schedules and the investment rate of return and the discount rate and they just make one of the blocks. If I did this for Idaho, we just did Idaho's numbers, and one of the blocks I would pull out is Idaho. They were making great returns on their investments. So, and keep in mind that they use this 7%, but it's supposed to be an average. So some years it's going up, and they're in the up phase. They're making good, but sometime it's going to go down. But while they were in the up phase, they said, oh, well, we have a lot of money coming in. We're going to increase benefits. It's like, and then of course, guess what happened the next year? They lost money. So then, they went from overfunded pensions to $2 billion underfunded pensions in 1 year because they added the benefits and then they lost the investment income. So the legislators, I just don't think have the wherewithal. And even if they're really smart and they understand all this, they're going to make decisions based on politics, not based on finances. So have we really set ourselves up for, we've set ourselves up for a disaster. Sorry.
What a pleasant note to end on. Sheila's going to be around for your pleasure and your enlightenment, so stay around, have some more food, enjoy our company. Wasn't it wonderful to get together again after this long sojourn? So great to see you here. And I want you to know that we want to keep coming back and continue to do all our work here on the island of Maui, so stay in touch with us. Make sure you do take with you this wonderful little brochure that Sheila has given. And join me now, please, and all of Grassroots Institute in giving a warm applause to Sheila Weinberg. Good job, Sheila.
Thank you.